So another very, very important source of humor is language, right? When we tell jokes, our jokes generally revolve around either a, cultural thing that we know will be understood by those who are in the know about the joke. It will be wordplay of some sort. Sometimes it does involve simply something that's going to be suggestive or dirty, and that, again, may be a little bit surprising, right? We tell it and it's a shocking thing, right? We see lots of shock comedy where people simply use very, obscene images or, very vulgar language in order to get an audience to laugh. Again, right, in a way, sort of an assault on the senses, right? A little bit of a violent streak in that. But we also see people who use funny voices, right? Who do things that just simply naturally strike us as humorous. There are different kinds of humor in different cultures. And I think we know this kind of because we assume sometimes when we see comedy coming from another country or from another culture, we may look at it and we may say, I can see how it may be funny, but it doesn't work for me, right? It's not my type of humor. I have an example of a student from a couple of years ago that told a story that at the time was a little bit of a shocking story for the class, and it was the same sort of context, right? I was talking about jokes and what things were funny, and he said, look, Professor Anderson, can I tell something from my country? The man was from Sierra Leone. He had survived a revolution there, a revolt there. He'd lived in some refugee camps. He was now here in the United States, and he said, but I want to tell that story because I think it was funny. And so I said, okay, let's. This is going to be a good cultural event. So he starts the story by saying, right, I was in my hometown, and the rebels had come, and they had come to the village, and they were killing people. And so everybody in the class was like, oh, that's a terrible story. Why? How could this possibly be funny? He said, I, had managed to, escape, and, later on, a friend who had also managed to escape told me that, as he was sort of escaping the town, he saw one of these rebels dragging an old man by a leg, and he was dragging him away and probably going to shoot him. And the old man, was saying, you can't do this, right? This is a terrible thing to do. You should be respecting your elders. What a terrible thing to happen. You can't kill me. And suddenly, an older commander came up to the younger man and said, what are you doing dragging that old man by his leg? And the old man, sort of looked very relieved, like he'd been saved, right? Because this commander was saying, look at him, he's old and he's infirm. And so he started saying to the younger rebel, yes, Sonny, you should respect your elders. Why would you drag me around like this? And then the commander said, be quiet. Why would you drag him? It's too much effort. You should just shoot him in the head. And then he said, no, Sonny, you can drag me around all you want. You can drag me all day if you want. And what we realized, right, this gallows humor that this man had experienced was funny for him because he and his friend, who had made it out of the situation alive, were still alive, right? And the gallows humor in there for them was that, in the face of death, right, can there be humor? And I think we understand that there must be, right? That this type of humor exists, right? It may not be something that appeals to us at all. But I think when we look at this combination of cartoon violence, real violence, and still the need to have humor in certain situations, that you will identify, right, people who have gallows humor. Sometimes certainly not as dramatic as that, right? But perhaps, right, you may think to yourself, if you have a car accident, right, oh, I can't believe that. I just filled the car up with gas. What a terrible thing, right? And that's a little bit of gallows humor, right? Because you think to yourself, of all the things I should be thinking about, right? I'm safe. I'm still walking away from this wreck, but look at that tank of gas that got wasted, right? It's that kind, right, of humor sometimes that becomes important for us. And I think what we're going to see in the next couple of weeks with Ionesco's Bald Soprano, we see very little of the violence and the slapstick humor. We see a lot of vocal, verbal humor and things that are ridiculous. When we get to Rhinoceros, on the other hand, what we see is something that feels a little bit more like a combination of comedy and very much gallows humor, right? A situation is evolving rapidly, things are going poorly, and the person who is responding to all of this has to decide how to respond. And in many cases, there is humor involved. When we eventually get to Jean Genet and the balcony, we will note that there is not a lot of humor, but that there is a good deal of, I suppose, wit involved. Where when we think about how ridiculous the situation is in the balcony, that it can make us laugh a little bit, or smile a little bit, or shake our heads like, I can't believe this is happening, right? Many people, right, use politics eventually as a way of, as a main point in a play, because it is sometimes easy to make fun of politics because you think to yourself, how could this possibly be happening, right? How could a government operate this poorly? But then think to yourself, but sometimes does our government not act kind of poorly, right? Does it not work kind of poorly? Do we not look at people and say, that is the strangest thing. How is this even a possibility? So in the last little section that we're going to do, I am going to sort of wrap up this idea of humor, but I also do want to talk about Ionesco. You have read, right, the Martin Esslin thing. If you have not yet read it, do read it before this next video comes up. And we'll talk a little bit about Ionesco, his background, and where these plays that we're about to read are coming from.